Hello, Malcolm. I'm so excited to be speaking with you today because you didn't leave me after I did a bunch of toxic things when we were first married and dating. And that actually is pretty big because it was one of the biggest points of conflict in our lives. And I wanted to actually do a podcast on it because you spent years deprogramming me from
Well,
doing.
so what the podcast theme is going to be on is we are going to be digging into how normalized and sort of praised sassy behavior is in wives towards
Mhm,
husbands. And
mhm.
sassy is the word I'd use, but there's other words that you can use to, behavior that is designed to put the husband down in front of other people.
Yeah.
And everybody sort of knows that this was normalized by media. We went through this as kids.
Yeah.
But now there's a phenomenon where a bunch of celebrities, like big celebrities, ranging from like Obama to like Will Smith to like we'll go over them all, and this was brought to our plate because we saw this. Brett Cooper was covering this,
Mhm.
and I was like, when I saw the clips she had found, because like obviously I don't watch what celebrities are doing, I
You're kind
was
of horrified.
shocked
Yeah.
at the degree to which these women actively and intentionally were degrading their husbands.
Yeah, if you wanna watch this, it's called Ranking the Top 4 Worst Hollywood Wives, and
Yeah,
it's
I'll put a
horrifying.
clip right here from when I'll put the feet clip right here because that one just is
Oh!
like, oh,
It's bad.
He crazy eyes. Like, look at the end there. Like, look at his face there at the very end as he is rubbing her feet. He is like, oh, this is what my life has come to.
But I mean, and what I want to explore, in addition to exploring some of these examples and like kind of poking into what is going on here, I also want to look into what has caused this to become programmed because actually there's a longer history behind all of this and there's a really
oh.
interesting tipping point, and I want to get into it because I think getting to the heart at what is causing this problem is going to play a key role in helping both men and women systemically dismantle it from their lives. Because you and I struggled with this as a couple.
Well, hold on. You and I did not struggle with it. You struggled with it, and I put the Kaya collar on you and had to.
Kaya, please.
She's getting off her place, she's getting shock. Gotta stay in that little place for 8 hours.
Oh, well, where you struggled was how exactly to communicate to me to get me in a way that got me to stop. Because I knew what I was doing was bad. And it took years for you to figure out the right way to message to me to get me
Literally
to stop
about 3
doing
years
this.
of dating before you
I
really.
think it
maybe
took
even
more than
5.
that. I think it took 5 to 7 years. Well, no,
Yeah.
okay, not 7, 5. I'm going to say
You
5
haven't,
years.
yeah, you haven't done it in at least 3 years, I would say.
But we've
maybe
been
4.
together for 12 or 13 years now, so
Yeah, but what's interesting about this is, you grew up in San Francisco. You grew up surrounded in the heart of the urban monoculture, progressive culture, and you grew up even starting dating me and internalized this sort of mindset.
But no, this is not an urban monoculture thing, or even it's not a progressive thing. This is a pervasive, deep, heavy thing. I think it has to do with a lot of. We'll parse into it when we go into the history, but let's start with the salacious
Okay, let's go.
celebrity
Go.
gossip because
Celebrity gossip.
it's so horrible and amazing. And so there's obviously the examples that were highlighted by Brett Cooper in her ranking the top 4 worst Hollywood wives video. She talks about Hilaria Baldwin and Alec Baldwin, and she also talks about Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith. So with Hilaria Baldwin, who Malcolm highlighted at the beginning of this, it's not just these social media clips that she posts of Alec Baldwin, who really comes across almost like
A captured animal.
I mean, look at this photo. We don't even know what is going on here. And yet you have her playing chess, smoking a pipe. And somehow she was able to convince Alec Baldwin. See, this is now where I feel bad for him. I feel guilty. He's wearing a maid outfit with a little cap and he's bringing bunny slippers. Like, is this how bad his career has gotten? That
Yeah, no, oh God, yeah, I'll send you a link.
I literally would rather be Kaya than Alec Baldwin.
No, I would rather be Kaya than Alec Baldwin right now. Like I swear, it's not because so Brett Cooper surfaced a bunch of the really worst, most egregious things that Hilaria had posted on her Instagram. However, if you just scroll through there in general, she's just using him as a shill for her really stupid vanity projects like Dancing with the Stars. And it's like hostage videos where he's like, text X to this number to vote for Hilaria Baldwin on Dancing with the Stars. Like, he looks like a hostage who's being forced to read off of a script to do her bidding. And it just everything where she uses his face just feels like he is being parasitized by this woman.
Whoa, they have
But
8 children?
yeah, they're actually doing
7 with her and 1 with someone else.
I know it's that's the thing that's really, but I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons why he as a man is taking all this from her, because something that I've seen from many men who have a lot of kids with a woman is when she's had a lot of kids, they're like, listen, I love my kids. Like, I am so grateful for my kids that I will endure a lot. And I think that might be a factor for why he's tolerating this. But the thing that I found most egregious,
I would, even if you went crazy like this, if I had 7 kids with you at that point, I'd
be like, whatever, man. But the thing that got me the very most was the red carpet scene, which I also just sent you on WhatsApp. That it's so horrible. Alec Baldwin is standing with his wife Hilaria on the red carpet, praising her. And she says, oh my God, when I'm talking, you're not talking. When I'm talking, you're not talking. This is why we need to cut him out of the shot. Like, she just cuts him off and acts like the most ungrateful, horrible person.
I don't think you make it more silly than it is. I actually feel I feel
get that on the show?
No, we just cut all that part out.
Cut me out.
Cut you out when you're trying to make it silly.
I don't care if this is your husband or a colleague or a stranger on the street. It just came across as so disrespectful. So I think it's a really strong starting point.
Well, and I guess some people are going to be hearing this and they're going to be like, well, why do I have to respect my husband? Right? And the answer is a fewfold. First of all, you shouldn't have married somebody who you don't respect, right? Like, that's a personal failing on your part.
Totally.
But then in addition to that, like, Alec Baldwin, even if I have like political differences with him or something like that.
Do something, Alec Baldwin! The global warming and corporate America.
Like, he's actually done stuff with his life. Like, I don't know what this woman has done, right? Like, nothing but marry a guy who's like
go on
twice her
Dancing
age.
with the Stars. Like
she should be treating him with respect because he is better than her.
And that's a big, I mean, with these prominent celebrity tiffs, in the majority of cases that are really egregious and that have gone viral, there's also a power distance. I mean, there are other instances of just toxic celebrity couples like Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, where it's clear that everyone's a complete psychopath. And, it's not about men versus women. It's just about crazy people being crazy and irredeemable. But yeah, the issue of these women who like really are in no position to be complaining because they've married into wealth. Like, do you know how many people would kill to be in that position, who would gladly be beaten daily just to be in that position? I mean, it's not PC to say that, but that's just how it is. Another prominent example that Brett Cooper highlighted, which deserves honorable mention, is indeed Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith. Everyone, of course, is really familiar with Will Smith completely flying off the handle at the Oscars and slapping. It was Chris Rock, right, in 2022. But the most egregious scene that Brett Cooper highlighted, and that's just so insane, is Jada Pinkett Smith having Will Smith on her podcast called The Red Table, where she just in front of him actively talks about her entanglement.
Sleeping with her son's friend.
Just disgusting.
And she's like, well, and he's
while still married.
She's making him, and I'm not going to play the clip for you guys because like I would stop watching. Like when that clip started, it was just too painful to watch.
Couldn't handle it.
But she makes him go on about how like he's like, well, I expected monogamy for marriage, and she's like, but I expected being polyamorous because like that's how I was raised. I guess raised in a single parent household or something is all I can assume is what she means by that, because polyamory was not common when she would have been raised. So I think that like I just love the way she argues for this and tries to normalize her behavior. Like, this is just a difference in our ideas around what marriage is, right? Like, as opposed to, no, marriage is what you agreed it was when you got married, right? Like, you don't get to change the terms of your relationship unilaterally.
Yeah, and it's clear that Will Smith was not okay with it. At one point, she says something like, the only person who could give permission for that was me. And he's like, yeah, not not me. Like, but in a way where he's like, I did not give permission for this. Like, I did not consent to this at all. It's
Yeah.
just horrible.
No,
It's a really
only
painful
I
scene.
can consent to who sleeps with, but the problem is part of normally like and it's clear that, and I see this a lot within that generation, is one partner wants to be polyamorous and they see it's like a thing now, and so they basically just force it on their partner because they don't understand that your partner has the right to turn down you wanting to be polyamorous, right? Like that's always been, and they don't understand that.
Well,
They're
a
like,
partner
how
who
does
doesn't consent
polyamory
to
work? And my
polyamory, that's just cheating then.
yeah, if my husband could just say no, how does this work? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, you should have negotiated it before the marriage, right? Like I see this over and over again within this generation, and it's really toxic the way boomers have taken and tried to use the word and relationship format of polyamory. Not that polyamory isn't in itself toxic. You can watch our episodes on those, but the ways that boomers are doing it is like a whole nother layer.
Yeah. Well, this is a common theme in prominent couples being criticized for the way that they treat each other, is airing dirty laundry like this, like talking about the fights they have. Like, I think Kristen Bell was criticized for talking about the fights that they have and her husband's anger issues and other things, and just people being really uncomfortable with that, like, dirty laundry being aired. But also, and Brett Cooper did not discuss this one, but there are really prominent examples of just women being physically abusive toward their husbands in public, like in a very intentional way in front of the media. And in this case, I'm gonna send you a TikTok. This is because you can actually see it in this. It is insane. It is Brigitte Macron, that is the first lady of France. You know, the school.
The one who's like way older than her husband and was his teacher or nanny or something growing
You'll
up.
see in this clip at Hanoi Airport as they're
She physically assaults him.
Yeah, as they're getting off an airport, she pushes him in the face. And then when they are heading down the stairs, he goes to like reach to hold her hand, and she like holds the rail and like clearly snubs him. And this is all very intentional, very in front of the cameras. Like at first, Macron looks like kind of shocked after literally his face gets pushed. Like, it's one thing to shove your husband like that already is physically.
But you should be like desperately shamed that anyone can see this.
I've never seen anyone push anyone else's face with two hands. Like, who even does that? And just that, like, we're talking about a first lady. A first lady.
A first lady. And
I think that
this
is really indicative
of a
of where we've
scandal
come.
that like I had heard of this, which is wild. I would think this would be a major scandal that I would have heard of.
Perhaps in France it was, but it is not a scandal here. I just don't know. But I mean, that was just insane to see. I mean, that's like this level just open.
Okay, I am curious to hear where this came from, because this is what, but it's behavior that I've seen, you know, when I look at like my parents' generation, whether it's them because my parents were divorced and remarried, or their friends, except for my biological mother did not act like this ever, to my knowledge.
No. In public, she always took on this very supportive persona. Like, you could tell it was an act of just like, yes, dear, and like, but she always acted the perfect part.
Yes, and even behind closed doors, she would
even behind, and always in front of of her husband, like very, very sweet, very respectful.
But the person who my dad remarried does act intentionally like sassy and puts him down in front of other people.
This is actually, so I think this is the more important form of spousal sassiness that I wanted to discuss more, because this is what had brainwashed me. And I think this is what's more normalized, right? Like, we can all look at these. By the
way, I want to be clear when I say this about the person who my dad remarried. I'm not saying this as like a disparagement of her character. What I'm saying is this is normalized behavior to the point where it was something my wife did until I corrected her behavior.
She's expressing normative behavior. Like,
she's expressing normative behavior, and it is my dad's responsibility to correct that, and he never did.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not putting it on her at all. And this is, so in terms of the prominent examples that I think are much more indicative of what's this widespread toxic sassy wife syndrome, is actually something that I saw and that really shocked me and kind of shook me when I was watching this Netflix documentary called Inside Bill's Brain, Decoding Bill Gates. And it's this 3-part documentary talking about Bill Gates. And it's just, it's pretty boring in general. It's like, what books does he read? And let's go on a walk with him. But it's peppered with these short interviews with Melinda Gates. They were still married at the time of the filming of this documentary. And even mentions that Bill Gates makes of her in other interviews where she is not present, that just show that the relationship, which did end in divorce after 27 years, was also permeated with this sassiness. She constantly kind of cut him down in interviews and kind of had this like sassy eye roll approach toward him of like, well, I kick, you know, I take him down a notch every now and then. Like I keep him grounded. And there's also the scene when he's hiking where he talks about how she always makes him walk first. So he walks into all the spider webs because he like, she doesn't want to deal with them. And you know, like what
I can't imagine these people who I think of as like super successful and having great lives, and they're like trapped in these horrifying relationships where they're the billionaires who are like Kaya in their own house.
Kaya, please. The thing is too, and this is another like such a prominent example of this, when they met, Melinda was just a newly hired marketing manager. And Bill was the CEO of Microsoft and co-founder. Like there's a clear power distance. And yet she acts as though she is this morally superior, smart woman who rolls her eyes at him. And just seeing that like subtly throughout the documentary, no one ever criticized that. Like there's all these other prominent examples of like Stephen Curry's wife going super viral after talking on a podcast about how like she never wanted to be a mother and she never wanted to be a wife and she wishes she had male attention, and people freak out.
So I didn't want kids. I didn't want to get married.
And I mean, these are like sort of more violent examples, I guess, or like really egregious examples of women being openly ungrateful. But the much more insidious issue is that women feel like it's okay and normal to be shrewish, to roll your eyes, to nag the husband. And that's where I wanted to get into like, okay, well, where did this programming come from?
Yeah. Where did it go? I want to hear, because you say it's not just typical wokeness. It came from somewhere specific.
No, yeah, and that's what's really interesting. So first, it's important to note, and I think all of us will immediately recognize this, that domineering wives were presented as warnings against male weakness, just either straight up through like, we're going to shame this, or through comic subversion, for basically as long as there have been stories. So that you have like,
so it's so funny that you mentioned this. So people who know, I love my Korean romance dramas that are period pieces, right? You know,
we need to like link to them somewhere so people can go through your top.
I'll link to some of my favorite ones if I can remember to. Just go to like Webtoons and look up anything about Villainous Reborn or something. They all take place in like this medieval world with like balls and galas and everything like that.
So people might be underestimating how cheesy the ones I like reading are. The last two I read was Charming the Northern Duke, which I did not think was very good, and I Abdicate My Title of Empress, which I thought was actually pretty decent among the ones I've read.
And by the way, if you're wondering, they have no not safe for work scenes.
No, they're all very just like.
I actually remember in one of them I was reading recently, a character got pregnant. And I was like, wait, what? Like,
when did they do anything?
You were not sleeping together. Like, how did you? It was so sly
That's
about
so
implying that they had moved to that stage of their relationship that I, the reader, was unaware.
Like, this is news to me.
But the thing I was going to mention about it is, in these stories, if a woman is acting domineering over her husband, that would be seen, because they deal with sort of older tropes, which is what I like about them. They're still very like older type stories.
Yeah.
That the husband is a bad guy, right? Like that he is in some way morally a failure of a person. You know, that would be, you know, an intro, and then you'd find out that he's into drinking and gambling and buying slaves or something.
That was the point, though, and this is a very old trope that it's a sign of male weakness.
Before we go further, another trope that I've noticed in them, which is very funny because this was true of all old stories, but it totally wouldn't happen in today's media.
Yeah.
And this is like universal, if a prince ever ends up getting a crush on like a maid, or a duke ever ends up getting a crush on like a common woman, you know, by the end of the story, it's going to be revealed that they were actually a princess all
Oh,
along
yeah, that's
and just
key.
got separated from their family,
Yeah.
or they were actually from a noble house all along, and just it is never crossing social boundaries. Whatever, because I remember in one, I was like, ooh, the princess is interested in this guy who is an orphan, and then no, he's not an orphan. He's actually a prince of a neighboring kingdom.
But you know what's interesting, actually, when you look at the current British royal family, I believe that there have been plenty of narratives in which people have tried to trace Catherine Middleton's ancestry to British nobility, even though she's a commoner. Like her family's not titled. Whereas Meghan Markle, seen as this largely villainized woman, who is also highlighted in Brett Cooper's video of horrible wives who demean their husbands, is, there's no provenance to her. Like there's no way someone could argue that. But that because Kate Middleton has been accepted and loved, even though she's sometimes ridiculed as Duchess Doolittle or the Duchess of Buttons or whatever. Though those were the earlier days. Now she's pretty much beloved. She has been like, the narrative has been shaped around her being from, actually she is noble that in the end. So I think that's interesting that these tropes bleed into reality. But yeah, I mean, even if you look at biblical references like Proverbs 21:9, they warn of a quarrelsome wife. I didn't know that the Greek philosopher Socrates, he was married. He had a wife. Her name was Xanthippe, and he was ridiculed because she apparently had a pretty sharp tongue, and he didn't really do much to resist it. But he was openly, publicly shamed for that. So like ancient Greece, this was an issue. Biblical references. Then we have, plays like The Taming of the Shrew with Shakespeare, where this popularized this concept of a shrew as a witch-like scold that needed to be tamed. Like, this is a problem to be solved, right? When a woman acts like this, you put her in her place. You don't tolerate it. In the 18th century, so we're talking the 1700s, there were these comedies that had what were called slipper heroes, which were men who were comically struck by their wives' shoes as they asserted dominance. So this, they're shaming men for this. Like it was like calling a man a cuck or something. And then in the 19th century, that's when slang like the old ball and chain sort of started to come into modern parlance or normalized parlance, where like wives were sometimes framed as these like shackles, as men felt like they were being domineered by them. It was always framed in a very negative and this is not an okay thing context. And then in the early 20th century, both cartoons and vaudeville and also really early films had comedians play henpecked husbands fleeing their nagging spouses. And that's something that was, again, framed as negative, ridiculed, not okay, unusual. There was also this radio show called The Bickersons in the 1940s. It's featured constant simping between spouses, constant sniping between spouses. And that sort of set the stage for what was to come. But it should be emphasized, and this is the key thing, and I think this is a really key turning point. All of these were framed as aberrations, as like, look at this freakish behavior, this woman who won't be put in her place, and not as a normative thing. And then what happened is we got mass media in the 1950s. And while in the beginning, you had sitcoms like Leave It to Beaver, where there was, a very aligned family and wives loved their husbands and women were happy to be subordinate to their husbands. This is when you first see the arrival of the sassy wife. And why I think the sassy wife in these instances caused women to normalize this as behavior that was permissible and not just like some joke or like an example of like a bad woman being, uncontrollable or a man failing, is because these were sitcoms. These are serialized shows, and people, instead of seeing a one-off play or like a sort of like weird scenario, these were like slice of life shows that were teaching people what was aspirational and normal. Does that make sense? Like, we still look back to the 1950s of like, this is what normal, ideal life is like. And people are anchoring to this. And so when you have shows like The Honeymooners, where Alice Cramden it frequently uses sarcasm and eye rolls to deflate her bombastic husband Ralph, and says things like, "One of these days, Ralph."
You know something, right after you left the house this morning, I got in one of those silly moods of mine. You know how I get sometimes? So just for laughs, I thought, well, I'll do the breakfast dishes and make the bed and take the garbage down. Then when I came back up, I was still in such a funny mood. You know, I thought, why should I settle down to the drudgery of mending your socks? So I scrubbed the kitchen floor.
Started in 1950s culture is what you're saying. It
Yes.
was the 1950s culture that makes a lot of sense.
But it's not what I'm trying to say too and highlight is that it's not just the culture, because these tropes were always here. It was the fact that these tropes were then inserted into slice of life sitcoms, serialized shows that became part of people's lives and that became aspirational templates for their own identities. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes.
it's one thing
No,
to
I
see
think
Taming of the Shrew by Shakespeare. It's one thing to see or to read something in the Bible or to like hear about an example. But here you're being like programmed by these shows of like, this is what I'm anchoring to. I want to be like I Love Lucy.
Sorry, honey, 7:30. Gotta have the sheets for the laundry man.
I want to be like this.
Well, and I've noticed this from women who aspire to be trad wives as well.
Yes.
So, and
It can
this
go
is
both
why,
ways.
and this is why I always say it's really dangerous to anchor to the 1950s in this way. And I think that you're 100% right. This is how people build sort of their templates for actions. They build ideals that they want from themselves. They're like the conglomeration of things that they admire or sort of, primed with, like, this is how you be the correct type of wife or the correct type of woman. And then they spend their lives trying to get other people often to see them as that type of thing.
Well, it's very like monkey see, monkey do. People, and we also see this in all these various social studies where like when girls are exposed to people in STEM roles more that are like them, then they're like, oh, well, I can join a STEM role. Like when you see someone do something that's like you, that's what you decide. Oh, well, that's what I do then. So because I grew up seeing women in the role of wife being sassy, my default assumption was, okay, well, if I were to become a wife, like, okay, I have to pull up my, like, what does a wife do? And I like pull into my Rolodex of like TV examples and they're all sassy. So what do? I act sassy because that is where I learned how a wife acts.
Well, I mean, I think it was amplified for our generation because, when we grew up, that's when you had, Love and Marriage, The Simpsons, all of those.
Well, yeah, no, it does get, so I'll explain a little more because it's more nuanced. I just want to, it is more nuanced than that. I wanted to emphasize with the 50s, the thing that happened is a new form of media gets released that I think changes the way that people created social norms, where the social norms were no longer coming from their local church community or from their schools or from whatever, like very localized stuff. It was coming from TV, and that those tropes then suddenly become a lot more powerful. And then in the 1960s, you had the arrival of second wave feminism, which contributed to these tropes. It also revealed some tension. Like there was this British sitcom called George and Mildred that established the blueprint of what became this sort of new trope, which I think further justified this behavior on behalf of women, which is this trope of the mediocre husband and then the materialistic middle-aged wife who belittles him for not providing more. Like, and that's like this sort of Homer Simpson and Marge thing. There was the Twilight episode called the Stop at Willoughby that portrayed a wife pushing her husband who hated into a job that he really hated, framing her as like this person undermining him and pushing him into things. There were shows like Bewitched where Samantha, the witch, used sarcasm to kind of manage her husband. So like this is sort of where the nagging wife came out, but also husbands, because I think in part because of second wave feminism, also started getting framed as a little bit more hapless. And then in the 80s and 90s, the sort of like hapless husband who was being nagged by his wife in a more critical way. Cause like this also showed the tension with second wave feminism, that like the women were depicted as kind of evil for doing this. And then in the 80s and 90s, suddenly the women weren't evil for doing this. And the husbands were just lovable buffoons like Homer Simpson. And like, I don't know, so what are some
I
other,
think Love
Everybody
and Marriage,
Loves Raymond is another one.
Love and Marriage, I think, is one of the best examples of this, given how long it showed and how ubiquitous it was.
Yeah.
Look at them over there. Men are such idiots. Look at them. Our protectors, the great white hunters. The one thing they're good for, they're not good at.
And that show is very big on the wife, nagging.
Yeah.
But you saw it on almost all of the shows. And this is what I think that you're capturing here with that I had forgotten. This was present on all of the major old sitcoms, or most of the major old sitcoms.
And the sitcoms are how this is where a lot of us learned how husbands behave, how wives behave, and what is acceptable and normative. Even though, like, the writers didn't mean to do this. They were trying to create comedic situations. They were trying to create drama. And I also think, like, you can see this too with reality TV. They have to manufacture drama and toxicity because it's entertaining. But I think that has led many people to think that their lives have to be toxic because that's what's normal, because that's what they see. But that's not normal. Like, relationships aren't toxic like that. But because we don't spend a lot of time around people anymore. Like, people aren't hanging out with other family, like, unless you're Mormon and you have like family home evenings and you hang out with your church community or whatever, you're Catholic or you're an Orthodox Jew, you're watching TV, you're watching reality TV, you're watching social media. And so you're watching these really toxic and dramatic and really fake relationship dynamics play out. And then you ape them at home because you don't have anything else to anchor to. And I think that's a lot of where this is coming from. But and I think one of the things is being aware of the media you're consuming and being really targeted about it is important. To your point, they can go both ways.
Clear about the way that you grabbed onto this early in our relationship, which I think differs from the way I've seen other people. You did not, unlike what somebody might say, you did not, and you never, and I don't think it should ever be normal to regularly criticize your partner, right? Like, that was not something you ever did. And the way I see other people do this, you also didn't actively throw me under the bus in social situations. You never once, I think in our entire relationship, have raised without any provocation some fault about me. But what you did do early in our relationship is people would attack me publicly and you wouldn't defend me.
I would side with them often.
Yeah, you'd often side with them and be like, well, they do have a point about. And I was like, Simone, you can't do that if you're married to somebody, right? Like, no, but I'd point out, because people could hear all this and they could think that you were actually worse than you were, and that, like, maybe you can fix more about a person.
I feel really bad about what I did, though. I mean, basically what happened is I just assumed that, like, oh, well, it's my job as Malcolm's wife to be the one who, like, takes him down a peg, because that's what wives do, right? And so every time, and this happened a lot at like family reunions, his family would gang up on him for really stupid things. And he would naturally react with some umbrage sometimes because he was being ganged up on for really stupid reasons. And, like, keep in mind, like, examples of things that his family would do to him, like at gatherings, like stick fake cockroaches in his food and hope that he freaks out at a restaurant, things like that. Like, this is not nice
I never
stuff.
do, though. I have like a perfect self-control.
Yeah, no, you were.
And I think I was trained by my family from a very young age.
Yeah.
To handle all of this with perfect.
But whenever you did show a little bit, or like whenever you tried to stand up for yourself, I would side with your family, and it would really deeply hurt you. You'd be like, why did you do that? Like, whose side are you on?
Yeah, why? Well, I'm siding with the majority, because women have a natural instinct to side with the majority when they're in group situations. Now, that is above and beyond the behavior that we're talking about here. Even when you first started dating me, you never insulted me in private, and you never were the instigator of a public insult.
But I think it's still notable that even a woman who is a devout super fan of a man, like I was of you, and still am of you more than ever, would normalize to throwing him under the bus in situations where he's being ganged up on in public, when she should obviously stand by him, because that is the culture we've been taught is notable. I want to point out what you finally, because you were always like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Like, you would always try to correct it by, after that happened, you would talk with me and be like, that really hurt me. Why are you doing this? Like, try not to do this in the future. For a while, you tried priming me, but then sometimes we'd forget. You'd be like, remember, like, we're a couple. Can you please be supportive of me? And that didn't work. What finally worked in the end, I think for me, like, what finally hit me is you sat me down and you said, Simone, you need to be aware of the fact that when you undercut me like this, you don't make either of us look good. Like, you make yourself look like a terrible person. You make me look like a not good person, and you make us look like a bad couple. And you think that what you're doing is diffusing tension and increasing social harmony, when in the end you're making yourself look like a conniving, backstabbing wife, and you're making me look like a buffoon, and you're making our marriage look unstable. Oh, poor thing. He's picking up on the tension. And I realized you were totally right. And I think if you are a dude,
so you couldn't do it for my sake, but as soon as your own civility was on the line, no, I mean, what
cater
really
to people's selfishness, Malcolm. I don't know what to say, but like,
just trying to defuse social situations.
I was trying to diffuse tension.
You didn't want to take the action that you saw as escalating the conflict. So if somebody attacks, because this is what you're used to doing with yourself, you look for a way to disarm them, the customer service
make
approach.
it go away. Yeah.
And you can't take the customer service approach. But the reason why I mention this is I want to talk about like what should actually be normalized in a relationship. One, I think, historically and today, first of all, there is no reason to ever regularly criticize your partner about anything.
No.
If your partner is doing something that is causing you distress or that you disagree with, this is not resolved by constant nagging. This is resolved by setting them down, talking through with them why, like as Simone said, I did with her when I had problems with her, being like, you need to stop doing this for this reason, and this reason, and let's think through the consequences of you doing this. And if they actually care about you, then they're going to do that, right?
Yeah.
Nagging, insulting, especially publicly, does absolutely nothing. And you should never, ever be the first to air negative information about your partner in a social context.
But I do think, because one, it was effective when you did it with me, that catering to women's vanity is important, because when all these women are doing this, and even when you see these examples that we've posted, these women think they're looking good. They are being vain. They are, when Melinda Gates rolls her eyes about Bill Gates and talks about how she, takes him down a notch, and how, she keeps him, solid. And when Hilaria Baldwin on the red carpet is like, you don't talk when they're all thinking that they're, advocating for themselves, and, no, they look horrible. Absolutely horrible.
Horrible even to other people like themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Very few people watch or look at this behavior and are like, wow, that person's really cool. And I note here, if you're like, Malcolm, what you expect from a relationship is just unrealistic for other people. Okay. I would point out that we have a lot of friends within our generation who are married, and I don't know one of them who doesn't hold their relationship to these standards. If of my married friends that are like educated, out sort of elite intellectual class, which is like the class that we hang with, none of them ever have spoken poorly about their spouse.
They're so solid. And I think a really great, if we want to talk about like a palate cleanser of a prominent couple that the media tried to make look divided and toxic when they ultimately aren't, is Hannah Nealman and her husband. When they had that British journalist.
This, by the way, what's she known by more Mormon?
Ballerina Farms. The Ballerina Farms Mormon trad wife. They have a beautiful farm and like 8 kids and maybe 10, a lot of kids. There was this British journalist who went out and wrote this piece about them and basically talked about, like, I think it's David Nealman, just mansplaining, like talking over her all the time and like, taking too much control of the conversation, and, tried to frame Hannah as this victim. And after it came out, Hannah posted on social media, like, we were taken aback by this, that, my husband has always been there with me. It is always both of us in the trenches with everything. She 100% stood by him, defended him, said that this is completely not an accurate depiction of reality. And they're so aligned and they work wonderfully together.
Well, it worked out in their favor. I mean, I think the public sided with them on that one was generally.
No, all the leftist female content creators that I follow are like, I'm confirmed she's been sidelined by him. Yeah, no, so people are going to believe what they want to believe. But I will say, even if Hannah, I would actually argue that Hannah, in everyone's view, comes across better. So if you want to believe that they're the aspirational corporate family or like trad couple, they look great after this. If you want to believe that Hannah is a beautiful, delicate victim whose ballerina career was stolen from her, she still looks better having not thrown her husband under the bus, because she looks like the victim who's taking the high road. So no matter what is true.
So she got that winning. No, so Simone, what was I going to say here? I also note that we have a lot of people reach out to us, like fans of the show, about their spouses, and not in a single one of the emails did any of them ever complained about their spouses.
Never. No, they're aligned. They care deeply about each other. 100%. It is the thing.
I can only think of one instance. So I'm actually like racking my brain to think of anyone we know. And the one instance, I don't think he saw it as a bad thing. He was like, well, my wife said that once we went above, what was it, like 4 or 5 kids, I needed to start doing more of the housework myself.
We've heard that actually from a bunch of husbands.
I don't know. To me, that was like but she's a stay-at-home wife. You know?
No, we've actually heard that from multiple husbands. I think that's a really common thing for husbands to experience in their lives.
But what I'm pointing out here is this isn't asking too much from somebody. And no, this isn't a one-way thing. The reason why we're not talking about men doing this is because we have other episodes about men doing this.
Yeah.
Watch our episode, You're So Red Pill You Cucked Yourself, which is where we talk about how within some parts of the red pill community or the culture that's downstream of that, they sort of confused aggression with masculinity,
anger with masculinity, when in the end a demonstration of anger is a demonstration of a lack of self-control, which is a demonstration of a lack of maturity and masculinity.
Yeah, we talked about who's the example of this? Crowder in his wife's divorce, right? Like,
yeah,
people are like, he didn't physically abuse her, but he talked to her in a way that I would be deeply ashamed to be caught on camera talking to my wife. Like, I'd be like, oh my God, this is like and apparently he talked to his staff the same way, which also is like, you don't talk to people like that. But if you learn masculinity from what was at one point normalized, and I say this to somebody who considers himself like squarely within the red pill manosphere movement, there was this, be growlier, always be in frame, always be, and most of the people who had that mindset have moved away from it at this point and are like, yeah, that's probably not the right way to think about this stuff. But generally speaking, these men are the minority, even within the red pill movement. And men just do not cross this boundary as frequently as women do, because culturally they know it makes them look terrible to talk about their wives this way. Mm-hmm. I have never heard a man in my age range, and this isn't even just like our friend group or something, refer to their wife as the ball and chain, refer to their wife as anything.
It makes you look like a dick. Just like acting like your husband's a lovable buffoon makes you look like a dick.
But everyone would, I think, most immediately realize this and call it out much faster if a man did this. If a man put his hands on a woman in the way that Macron's wife put his hands on him, he'd be in effing jail.
Yeah, I know, right?
If somebody, treated their partner, and I have actually seen this within certain manosphere influencers, where the man will treat their partner the way that Baldwin's wife treats him. Like, I sit down and I have her dressed up as like a maid and like delivering me stuff, or I sit down and I put my legs in her lap or something. And these are typically like I watch some less popular manosphere creators, okay? And they got it in their head that like the way that like you show dominance over a woman, because they're like, well, I'm married now, like I'm in a long-term relationship, so how do I continue to show how cool and dominant I am?
Well, there's that one guy who gets up at 4 a.m. and his wife or girlfriend, like, you see her hands show up in his videos as he's getting up and like she slices his bananas and gives him food in a bathtub or something. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And I'm like,
doesn't make him look good though. It makes him look like a baby.
It makes him look like a baby. I like the way you say that. No, but what I wanted to point out here is the way that you either way are coming off to other people with this. With women, people come off this way, but it doesn't get stopped. And the reason why we need to bring this up is the show does have a lot of female viewers, and also a lot of.
It also has a lot of young male viewers who are going to find themselves in positions where there will be the first time where your girlfriend or fiance or wife does this, and what. You need to have a conversation about that immediately, about what it means to you, about the optics for her, about the culture that may have led her to believe that. All this stuff too makes me think twice about Mormon standards around media, how like it actually does kind of matter what you grow up watching. And I think
No,
Mormon standards around media would not shield any Mormon from these toxic dynamics. Like they're trying to hide Mormons from swear words when instead like they should be hiding them from toxic relationship dynamic shows. Like I don't know how to
I mean,
how to
I
make
think
a
the way
standard around that.
and if you're like, how do I quote unquote train my wife on this stuff? It's you sit her down and you don't let any instance of this slide. Every time it comes up, it is
You
a
bring it up. You have a
conversation
conversation.
that
Yeah.
you need to have. It's not a nag. It's a this is not productive. It makes both of us look bad, and it makes our relationship look bad, and it is
Mhm.
detrimental to our combined goals as a couple.
Yeah.
So how do we work on this, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that the way that I would frame your relationship with your spouse to them so that they can understand what you mean by this is as like a noble house. Think of it like what it used to mean in one of the Korean romance mangas to marry into like the Duke's house. Okay, when you
This is what I'm talking about. Media coloring the way that you see the world.
When
Now you see the whole world through like Korean dramas.
when you marry into the Duke's house, now the house's goals are your goals.
No, it's true though.
If
It's
something
true.
bad happens to the so you would never act counter to the Duke's will in public because you two are a team. You are two faces of the same sort of corporation, right? You there is no conflict, and it's not that you could negotiate for a higher place. You're his wife. That means your role is X. He's your husband. That means his role is Y.
His successes are your successes. Your successes are his successes. Absolutely. And failure.
And so like that is, and I think that one way you can really do is when you're having the marriage conversation with a woman and you're like, this is what I expect from marriage. Like, this is what I want marriage to be about us. Not you never criticize your husband in public, but like we are working as a combined entity for collective goals. And that it's very easy to have aligned goals with someone so long as your goal isn't just hedonism or status or something like that. But even then you're probably better off working with someone.
I knew actually really good couples whose shared goal was hedonism, and they pulled it off. They made it great. Like, and they had a lot of fun together, but they were aligned on it. Like I don't care what your aligned goal is, but it is your aligned goal and you do it together. Don't undermine each other. And oh my gosh, just how uncomfortable it is to be around that couple that like fights.
Oh, it's miserable. You wouldn't want to be around them at all. You'd have no reason. But
we've all been there where you're like at a dinner and a couple starts fighting and you're like, can I leave now? This is
when I was growing up, I was exposed to a lot of boomer parents. Okay. And I have a lot of friends who are around our age, and I guess of sort of a similar social class to the parents I was exposed to as a kid. I can think of few. I would say maybe 25% of those boomer relationships where I didn't see the wife belittle the husband.
Totally.
I of people in our age group, I would say it's near zero. And so like, don't do it. It's not normal. It's not a holdover. I think that our generation is already normalized to not do it. But if you're dealing with this, or if this is a challenge for you in your relationship, I think even just normalize to your friends, right? Like if she's like, oh, this is
push back. Yeah, push. So we've had other episodes where we talk about this. Where we have the episode where we talked about the mental load concept that has been really spreading around social media, where women are unfairly complaining about this mental load they experience because they are the ones remembering to pack their kids' lunches. They're totally not acknowledging, as people like Amanda Claypool have pointed out, the fact that men also have their own mental loads of like, defend the family. Like, what happens if you hear a door open your house at 2 a.m. in the morning? Is that your problem as the woman, or is your husband the one going down? Like, men also have mental loads that they deal with that women take for granted, just as men do. So like, that's not even fair. But like, so there are these memes that circulate on social media. And one thing that was really interesting in the comments on our video on mental loads, where women are complaining about this and acting like, you know, it's so unfair what they take on as wives and they have to take on these man children and take care of them, is that in their friend groups, they often had like one person who would constantly complain about these things because they'd been poisoned by various like algorithmic pools on social media. And that it was really annoying to them that like the two other friends in their groups would never call them out on it, and that they were always the one to call them out on it. But I think that it's so great that they're doing that, and you need to be that person. You need to be that person to be like, girl, like that's, what are you doing?
And to pull yourself out of friend groups like that.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing is pull your partner out of toxic friend groups if they're toxicing.
Yeah.
Because that stuff spreads like a virus.
It does. Yeah. Well, thank you for pulling me out of it, for deprogramming me. And I
you know where I do still see it? Lesbian relationships.
I thought you were going to say, I still do it. I'm worried about that.
No, I do still see it in lesbian culture, but lesbian culture is, uniquely toxic, like very low levels of mental health, high levels of divorce, high levels of spousal abuse. So like, I can see why they would. Also, they're more close to the urban
What
monoculture.
lesbian friends do we have?
We have a few lesbian friends, which is why I don't see it. But in everyone that I have had, like lesbian acquaintance I have had, or I've seen negative talk about partners. I don't want to be too specific, but you don't remember that? They transition, so maybe you don't think of them as a lesbian?
Transition. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I love you.
Love you too.
Thanks for tolerating me.
I'm barely making it, guys.
Just get the shock collar out. It'll be okay.
Get the shock collar. I'm gonna see if I can make a video where I edit you to be shocked looking.
We need to. No, I'm sure like there's some Halloween sale after Halloween where we can just buy like shock collars for humans. Like the kind that we're supposed to have like bombs on them, like have flashing lights or something. We need to get this for like all of our children. And every time the journalists come over,
dressed up as Kaya and Hassan, shopping.
That is the Halloween costume of the year. That is to be Kaya for Halloween. Kaya and Hassan.
Kaya, please.
Can we? Oh my God! I wish we had a Halloween party to go to so I could be Kaya. Or no, our children would all be Kaya and we would both be Hassan. That would be chef's kiss. Oh well. Oh well.
Love you. Bye.
Love you too. But it's all good.
I think delicious chips and salsa.
And what I'm going to do with the bulldog is I think I'm going to go ahead and freeze everything so that we're not like reheating it after refrigerating it multiple times. I think that like from a food safety standpoint isn't good, but every time I redo it, I'm going to simmer it for a while before I...
Well, did you boil the bulldog first?
Boil? No, you're supposed to, per the recipe, you pan sear it until it's browned on the outsides.
Yeah.
I think what needed is like, it needs to be steamed because you were saying the inside didn't seem soft.
Well, remember the first time you cooked it, you steamed it before you pan seared it.
No, that was just for bulldog. Sorry, that was just for Tioboki or whatever, like plain.
No, well, I think, we did something wrong. Like we were supposed to steam it in some way and then brown it.
No, I did it exactly the way I was. I followed the directions.
You got the directions from an AI, Perplexity or something.
No. Actually, I got it from a recipe that you sent to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When Perplexity gives me instructions, nothing goes wrong. The AI only guides me correctly. You don't understand.
I love it when people get mad about AI hallucinating, and I'm like, people hallucinate all the time, you knob. Like,
yeah, it's human recipes give me the most trouble, honestly. That's where I
well, then it's my fault. I sent you a bad recipe. So I guess, we'll just cook it longer when we reheat it.
Yeah, and we'll see tonight if that works. And if it doesn't, then we'll find something else to do. But I have confidence in this one.
Yeah. The rice cakes came out, for the audience who wants to know, they were a little hard compared to how they normally taste. Or their usual texture. As one of our kids is very into texture. He's like, I really like the texture on this toy. He'll say like, feeling it is like metal or something. He's like, it's got a great texture to it. And he sounds so sophisticated.
Well, they're autistic, so I mean, texture's everything if you're autistic.
I don't tell him he's a weirdo.
We know we're weirdos. I love that I knew I was going to love your family when your mom said that the family motto was, I'm not okay, you're not okay, and that's okay. And I'm like, that is amazing. Please.
What are they going to say? The episode today. So in my GSB class for Stanford Business School, there's like a group and everyone's starting podcasts now. It's like the third podcast that's gone live recently. But of course, I'm terrified they'll one day find my podcast. Or
you haven't told anyone about your podcast in that group?
No. I am terrified that they will find, because they are far, far left. Anyway.
Yeah, but they never liked you anyway. I mean, you had some friends. You had like a few friends who were really nice to you, and then everyone else like acted super superior and kind of ignored you and
Yeah, they kind of did. It was really surprising. I don't know why.
There's really no love lost, Malcolm. I mean, there were, I could probably count on one hand the number of people who were not dicks to you at Stanford GSB. you can take this part out, but not even. She was only nice after.
Yeah, she was nice. No, she was nice to me for a period at the beginning of the GSB, and then
she got in with the cool kids, so she had to stay away from you.
Yeah,
she's smart. Nothing on her.
Nothing on her. You're hanging out with the cool kids. You're hanging out.
But
with
I'm only at 4.
Oh, you forgot what's her face, and I'm sure there were others. I don't have a great memory.
No. Sorry,
and she was dating me from the first day I went there too. So you know.
Yeah. Actually, no, because for the first at least 30 days, you were dating, and like during the summer vacation leading up to it, you were traveling with various subgroups of the GSB to get to know them, and also in search of a wife.
It's so weird to have a wife who was with me during my time at graduate school, because, you know, I can look back on high school or I can look back on college and feel like, hey, maybe people weren't that nice to me. But then I'm like, no, Malcolm, you're just being indulgent. Everybody thinks that way. And now I have this person who is fairly level-headed and experienced all this with me and is like, no, Malcolm, actually people didn't really like you that much. Because of course in my head, like, trying to be generous, I assume that I must have been being a jerk to people and not realizing it. And so when I looked back on my life up until Simone started being an external recorder, this is the way I saw myself.
Hey Liz, how's the telescope?
I don't know, Kelsey. How's your mom's pill addiction?
So,
but anyway, I thought it was really funny because they released this podcast and it's so like NPR voice and everything like that. And on the same day that podcast goes out, my podcast about Nick Fuentes fangirls comes out, like fan fiction of Nick Fuentes and like, you know,
Morning Glory milking farm or whatever.
Milking minotaurs at the milking farm. And I'm like, this is like my level of culture right here. This is like your level of culture, right? Like we're not in the same world. She's talking about like Haitian relief efforts or something.
Not even that though. Like you had so much more. Okay, we had so much more substance in our podcast about Nick Fuentes fan fiction and female gooners than she had in an entire opening podcast, which was literally the thesis of it was, I lived through a disaster in Haiti and I discovered that someone was nice to other people during that disaster. What a revelation. I'm going to go give speeches about that and start a podcast about it because I can't believe that people might actually do nice things for other people.
I'm
being very charitable.
If I'm going to be generous, what I would say is I think she's not going for like an informational podcast. I think
no. She's a development coach. So her entire shtick is motivational messages and dealing with a lot of very helpless people
like us and our thing. Like obviously we would not gel with that sort of like a vibe, but I think for the audience that she's trying to target, I thought it was incredibly well produced. Like I'm going to be honest,
it was well produced. It was
the production was top quality,
way better than ours. And yeah, we're very. I mean, there's like a grunting baby in our audio here. Like I get it.
The theming, she would even have like within her own words, she would trail off and then like audio would start and then it'd go back to her words to have like a, you know, like you would have on NPR as a transition between two people.
Not my aesthetic. That's not my aesthetic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's for.
Oh my God, though, if we did though, we'd have to use audio of our son Torsten going doot doot doot.
No, it's funny. But when I was listening to it, all I could think is like the person who consumes this is like a different species from whatever we are.
Well, people literally comment on our podcast being like, what is that? So we are different species from other people. Yeah, it has been confirmed by our own viewership. So it's fine.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear here, I'm not saying it was bad, like something produced for this alternate species of human that exists alongside me. It was expertly produced. Like it sounded like a very high quality NPR piece, but like when I listen to NPR pieces, I'm like, but why? Like the speed at which new ideas are introduced to me is so slow. I think it's more about a vibe, and some people live for like this vibe, and I struggle to emulate that part of humanity.
We target nerds. Like that's the thing, right?
So the people I'll be working with, what they like.
Standard nerds.
You know, we don't target like what's the in thing. I think pretty much everyone who watches us is a nerd.
A religious nerd, a MGTOW nerd, a racist nerd, a gene bro nerd, tech nerds, AI
Right.
nerds.
Do you wanna get us started on
Sexy
today's
nerds,
episode,
though.
Joan?
They're all sexy nerds.
Yeah, we got a bunch of sexy nerds ready to unholster their autism on the world.
That's what base camp is all about.
Right?
Yes. Okay. Sorry, let me get the outline in front of me. And I mean, I had to slap this together really quickly because I didn't know you wanted to do this today. So it's not perfect, but we're gonna get into it.
Well, we can go through some of the specific examples that what's her face.
Yeah, and I have some too. You know,
Okay.
I've got stuff. I'm just saying I'm running on 2.5 hours of sleep, and
I understand, Simone.
Okay. Oh.
If you want to put this off, we can do another one.
No, I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready. And I'd rather do my debt jubilee one when I'm not running on so little sleep, because this is a little more personal. All right.
Okay, so what's happening, guys?
I'm getting these Halloween fruits out. Gee, there's still a lot.
That's a lot of pumpkins.
Yeah, there's G. Yeah, these are a lot of pumpkins.
What are you doing, sweetheart? Oh my gosh. Are you going to take out too many seeds? And put them in the bowl. But it doesn't look... Oh, yeah, you are putting them in the bowl, aren't you? Oh, that's a good plan. And what about you, Toasty?
Well, I have a giant spoon to get so many seeds out. I thought a giant spoon to get seeds out.
Okay. And Octavian, what about you? Is this fun?
Yeah.
Is this fun, Octavian?
Yeah. It's very fun. Oh.
Do you like having a Halloween birthday party?
Up we go.
Did you know that Daddy has a birthday around Halloween?